Everybody, we're populating here, so we'll give everybody a chance to join. Thank you for joining. And wave your arms vigorously above your head if you can't hear me. So it's 3 o'clock, so we'll give everybody a 2-minute window here, 2-minute grace period before we get started, before we start hanging ends. All right, so it's 3:02, and I think we'll get started. I'm sure we'll have a few people come in a little later here. Also, we're recording this, so it'll be available for other people to view afterwards by audience of millions. So no matter how many are on here, it'll be viewed again. So I'll start just by introducing our panelists for the Arena to Dedicated Ice session here. Kim Chapin and Mike Greenberg from the San Francisco Bay Area Curling Club. There you guys are. Craig Fisher from the Fort Wayne Curling Club. There's Craig nodding his head there. He's on mute, but he'll remember to take that off when he talks, I'm sure. Bruce Irvin from the Evergreen Curling Club. I don't know if Bruce is on yet. I don't see Bruce yet. Sue Mitchell from the Triangle Curling Club. There's Sue. And Jonathan Penny from the Cincinnati Curling Club. There's Jonathan right there. Thumbs up. Thank you, Jonathan. Welcome to everyone who's here. First, I just want to thank the panelists for joining us here on what in the Twin Cities is a beautiful Saturday afternoon. So I don't know what it's like where you are, but I appreciate you doing this. And you know, I think for a lot of, I've always said our arena curlers are among our most dedicated. Because as much as I love curling, I'm not sure I would do all the things necessary to curl on arena ice week in and week out. And I love curling a lot, so I'm always been impressed by that. But I think the way I want to approach this, or the way we'll approach this, is sort of a life cycle of going from arena to dedicated ice. So I'll zip around the panel. But anybody, even if I don't call on you, you should feel free to just jump in with thoughts. Can keep this fairly interactive. But if we start off just with tell me just little bit about your club's launch in the first place in an arena setting, and sort of your own introduction to curling, if that was your own introduction to curling. So I'll start with, maybe we'll go around the horn here to the people from our newest dedicated ice club, Kim Chapin and Mike Greenberg. Tell me were you around when the club started on arena ice?
No. So I mean, the San Francisco Bay Area Curling Club has been around since I believe 1958.
Yes,
so
that's true.
The club's actually been around for a long time. At one point in the early days, they actually had dedicated ice and then lost it. So it's been, you know, a bit of a roller coaster ride for the club in several locations, and it's been around a while. I joined the club in 2007. And I believe the club was around like in the 30, 40 member range at that point, curling about once a week on arena ice in San Jose. And I guess already when I joined, even though club growth wasn't yet at the point that we could support a dedicated facility, there was already that desire to get there someday.
Right.
So that was already there. It was a matter for us of figuring out how to grow the club to the point where it could be feasible to really start in earnest on that journey. I don't know if you want me to go further at this point or if that's a good enough.
Perfect. And you were doing it in a market that's not easy. But let me ask quickly, I'll ask all of you this question, is so we know how long you guys went now from, because I'd actually forgotten that the San Francisco club was around in the 50s and 60s. Tell me a little, just quickly, how long each club went from being in an arena setting to being on dedicated curling ice. And I'll throw that over to Craig next.
So we founded the club in 2010, and we moved into our first dedicated facility, our starter facility, in 2014.
Pretty fast. Jonathan Penny?
2010, and we got our dedicated facility in 2019.
Okay. And Sue, your journey, I think, was a little bit longer at your club, and you may not have been there the whole time, right?
Correct. So it started in 95. I joined in 2006. They were down to 12 members. So really a fresh start in 2010. And then found land at the right time, and then opened our building April of 2015.
All right, I'm gonna assume that for everybody on this call, the biggest obstacle initially probably was finding dollars, right? Finding money to make this happen. So quickly, let's go around again to Kim and Mike. Tell me some of the things you learned during that journey. And I know it was a bit of a roller coaster for you guys, but tell me about that.
Well, I mean, by the time we voted to move forward with dedicated ice, we were curling out of 3 different arena locations around the Bay Area and filling several draws several times a week. And a few challenges we met was trying to get agreement on where to look for dedicated ice, given the very large geography of the Bay Area and the, you know, where all of our members were spread. And then, of course, cost in the Bay Area was astronomical, so that had to come into play. And when we started looking for real estate, the commercial real estate was just really taken off. So that was a huge challenge. And then just trying to find affordable labor and, you know, reliable labor was a big issue in those early days, like just to get up and running.
One thing we did to just try to establish some early credibility was to set some criteria that would determine whether we even sought a vote of membership to move forward. So I think one of the very first things we did is we kind of understood we would need at least 200 members, and so that was one of the criteria. The other was that we wanted to have raised a relatively significant amount. I think in our case it was around $250,000 raised or pledged before we pulled the trigger on a membership vote, just to demonstrate that we had that fundraising muscle and that the community was in and putting money where mouths were, and that, you know, all helped establish some minimum level of performance and credibility before we even voted officially to, you know, start start getting serious about, finding the right location and signing a lease.
So you set some benchmarks early, which now, Craig, I know one source of your club's funding was your unlimited bar tab for a number of years. But what other methods did you use or look at?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we have a little bit easier road than San Francisco, given the cheapness, the relative cheapness of Fort Wayne, and we're able to find all three places we've curled within 200 yards of one another, and we were able to build two facilities each for under 300,000. But the first one was largely member funded. I think we went into it with dreams of corporate sponsorships and things of that nature, but in a curling desert like Indiana, it's tough to get corporate sponsors to pony up money for a sport they really don't understand. Second time around, we funded it largely through a partial loan from the World Curling Federation and selling lifetime memberships to the club. So we sold for $10,000. We sold lifetime memberships to the club. Gives them, you don't have to pay league fees, etc. And we generated, between the build out and during COVID, about 60 grand from selling lifetime memberships.
So that was the second. I should note for anybody who doesn't know this, Craig's actually done this twice. They went into an original 3-sheet facility, and then, as if that wasn't challenging enough, they thought they'd move down the street and build a new 4-sheeter. So how many? So and you sold the lifetime memberships and the moved to the 4-sheeter, I guess.
Yeah, so the lifetime memberships were part of the 4-sheeter, as was the WCF loan. The 3-sheeter was largely member funded, and right. Some other shucking and jiving to do trades with people to drive cost of labor down, etc. Sure. But largely member funded.
Sue, how about Triangle? What were you? I mean, and I was at your club the weekend it opened, so it's one of my favorites.
We barely opened it.
Yes.
Lots of challenges. Sort of a combination of what Craig and the San Francisco folks have said. Closer to San Francisco with our land prices today, but when we started to look in 2011, we hit the economy at the right point and going back up. So we went to our membership and we triangulated. And where do you live? How far away from the club do you live? How many leagues do you want to curl in? How far would you travel? Where do you work? You throw out the Greensboro and the Wilmington, the people that are crazy enough to drive 2 hours for hockey ice. And then we triangulated from there, and we found a piece of land that was residential. And we bought that land, but to build on it, we needed money to go to the bank to say, hey, we can afford to build on it. So that's when we went to our membership and got, we had somebody pony up the money for the land, went to the membership for the lifetime memberships, and that route, same as Craig was saying, hard to get corporate sponsorship. And then we had some curling loans and indemnitors that we had to pay back if we didn't make it a go. Our location proved out because right after we built, they said there's a new mixed use coming in. We're 15 minutes from Apple's new headquarters on the East Coast, 15 minutes from the airport. So we lucked out.
You guys have the real estate luck that I've never had in my entire life.
Yeah. And we bought 7 acres and sold half of the land to get the money to go to the bank as well. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, Jonathan, fill me in with you guys. Now, when you moved there from I guess from southeastern Ontario, right? When you moved down to the Cincinnati area, and so that was the club was going at that point, weren't they? And then
Yep. 2010. The story is Greg Banks loaded up a set of rocks from Columbus to Boro in his minivan and dragged them down the highway with the tailpipe on the I-71, and then threw them on a hockey sheet and tried to drum up some interest then. I moved to town in 2012, a couple of years later, and 13 of us around the table all pointed at me to be the president, and here I am still today. but yeah, it kind of similar to San Francisco in a way. We played at 3 different hockey rinks in town. All of our efforts went into almost marketing, right? Not in a traditional curling community like Wisconsin or Minnesota. So selling people on the idea that a dedicated ice facility could work. I came from the Brockville Country Club, a 6-sheeter in a town of 20,000. So I was always pretty confident in the operations side of things. Being a paid ice maker at that club, I knew a small town could generate some good dollars in curling. So now I'm in a city of 2 million. Yeah, we should be able to, net out $30,000-$40,000 a year pretty easy, I would think. It was just getting people to believe that, and through similar fundraising ideas of member loans and stuff like that was really the way we went. One quick anecdote. Our meeting was at a local brewery called Fretboard, and one of our members, when we got to our dedicated ice, he's tying his shoes up, ready to go on the ice. He's got 2 beers in his hands. He's got no room for his broom, like he's carrying everything, and he's super excited. He's never had an opportunity to play a sport with his son. His son just wasn't very sporty. And now they're playing together, and he says to me, "I thought you guys were crazy when you presented this idea at the brewery, but here we are." And he took off, beers in hands, and it was one of those moments where, you kind of knew what the end goal was going to look like, but you couldn't articulate it to enough people to let them know how dedicated ice is going to change the sport for you.
Right. It's interesting you're talking about comparing to other communities. One thing I sometimes tell clubs to do is that are trying to make the move is find a city that has a dedicated facility that's maybe similar in terms of curling culture that existed there if it's a brand new sport, and then look at the percentage of the population that curls and then throw that in to your own calculations. It works great in New York City, by the way, but nobody's been able to really believe me on that yet. But because with that pro forma, I could have like 10,000 members. But I think it's a good tool. Like you said, you're 20,000 people. I mean, sure, it's a country with a different curling culture, but you didn't need that many. I'll go back to you real quick, Jonathan, for construction. What was your biggest challenge? Now you're an ice tech, a good one. But what was your biggest construction challenge as you got going? Besides those police tape hog lines that I love, by the way. It didn't work out so well. I love them.
It was a homage to the criminal activity in the building before us. I think we got lucky in a way that we had an iron worker as part of our membership. We had a general contractor. We had a woodworker, a couple of woodworkers. We had, a retired R&D guy from Procter & Gamble. We had a lot of talent in our membership crew that was, hey, let's build our own tubing system for the ice. And I was just like, well, okay, I'm brave, but I'm not sure if I'm that brave with ice and glycol. But we did it, and we're going into our 4th season with no issues whatsoever. Things have been rolling along pretty good. When we're even lifting the chiller off of the trailer to put in place, we rented a crane, and the iron worker's boss, the VP of the company, comes down and helps lift it off on a Saturday afternoon. So leveraging all those little things that are going to cost you ridiculous amounts of money just to get equipment on site was surprisingly handled by our crew. So I think we actually beat Craig Fisher's 300,000 number in cheapest build.
So I think the lesson there is every arena club should recruit talented tradespeople as members. Which is not, I see Craig nodding. I'm going to ask Craig because I know I've talked to him about this before, but your biggest construction challenge, and then just some thoughts on construction.
Yeah, first off, just to play off of that. So, make sure you know what every single person in your club does for a living and what skills they have, because, and everybody that comes for a Learn to Curl, man, just talk to everybody, find out what they do for a living, find a plumber, find an electrician, all that sort of stuff. You get somebody who's interested in curling and you can get a sweet deal from a price perspective. I would say our greatest construction challenges were around fire detection suppression. In both instances, our facility, which you can sort of see behind me in my background, we've got one of those low E ceilings, and nobody really knows. Your architect and others won't know a lot about it. And we found in both instances, in the first facility, we had to put sprinkler heads above and below the low E ceiling, and in the new facility, which wasn't sprinkled, we had to put smoke detectors above and below. So we got caught on that the first time. That drove some extra costs to us. We figured it out on our own. We ignored our architect and brought in the fire inspectors to make sure we didn't get surprised, and we were able to avoid the cost there. The other thing is ADA compliance, right? So, at the very end, we're trying to get all the handrails done the right way and everything else, and we're trying to do it with maximum volunteer labor. And there were a number of challenges we ran into. So we actually ended up having to bring in an outside carpenter to get that finished up in the last couple of days before we opened the doors.
It's great. Those are two things I'm not sure everybody would think of right away, especially the fire situation. I'm going to go to Sue. I'm saving the California people for the end here on this one, but I'm going to go to Sue. And yeah, you did mention that first spiel. I think you guys were planting shrubs while I walked in the door with my curling shoes, but.
We were painting parking spaces that
Yeah.
week, or getting parking approved. Different challenges as it's our own building. So there's a rainy season that we didn't know about. So we had lots of rain through the winter that delayed our construction. And then just similar to things everyone else has said, but then to add on to that is keeping your membership involved and feeling like their decisions are important as well. Even if a decision has been made that they don't agree with, or they don't feel they're part of the construction, everybody you feel if you could get, we did the rebar ourselves. So we had a lot of people come out and put sweat equity into it. And then afterwards, people are like, well, we need these kind of chairs, or we need this, or we need this. And we used a bucket system. So when somebody came up with an idea that they thought was wonderful, well, we're like, but that's not needed to open. So that's bucket E. Oh, wait, we didn't think of that. That's bucket A. We have to find money for that. Okay, that's bucket B. We need that. We're not ready for it yet. Bucket C, you go find the money. Just we made it fun.
Yeah, that's a good approach. I like it. All right, Kim and Mike, we know your construction journey was not the typical one.
3-minute.
Yeah,
so I'll give everybody just a little preamble. They started the construction, and then the construction sort of stopped, and they had to get it going again. That's just the real top line. So take it away.
I think so. We ran into similar challenges that I've heard already. I mean, we basically at every step of the process, we've met a challenge. We didn't have a ton of labor skill in our membership base, but we did have a lot of smart people who were able to kind of navigate a lot of the oversight issues. But we just
some architecture and other
we had architects. Thank goodness we have some legal expertise. We had a lot of tech expertise, like they built a monitoring system for our ice temperatures and humidity. But overall, we didn't have any contractors per se, but we did have expertise. But when it came to hiring people, the shortage of labor in the Bay Area really hurt us, and we couldn't even find a contractor to bid on our job for months. It was just really challenging. And then our architect was very, very delayed. So that kind of gave us an initial hit. And then, of course, the pandemic. But I think things to watch out for, definitely ADA compliance. That our original contractor messed that up so bad that we had to rebuild the inside of our curling club.
Is that what that's what the original problem was, ADA compliance?
There were lots of problems.
Yeah,
that was one. And the
Yeah.
thing is, you have to pay attention to some of these things that seem like finishes. You have to pay attention to really early, because if you don't get them right, then you're in a situation where you have to
Yeah.
demo and redo work, and that's more time and money. And we talk about bringing curling to, especially these major top 10 metro areas.
Yeah.
Your running costs are exorbitant, right?
Yeah.
So our people's heads would explode just knowing the rent numbers alone every month that you're not open. And so things can spiral out of control very quickly if you don't have tight control of those things, if you don't correct problems immediately. And I would say, like, one of the things we did, we, unbeknownst to us, hired a contractor. It was not a very good contractor, and it was really a night and day experience once we did rid ourselves of them and get somebody on the job to finish the job who was competent. Like, what a difference that made. So where you are filling in those skills, where you don't have trades within the club, worth every bit of due diligence to make sure that you're getting somebody of quality who knows what they're doing. And then too, I think, like, curlers tend to be nice to a fault, but you really can't allow things to go off the rails for very long. You can't afford to double down on mistakes when you see them, and have to be willing to get in there and correct problems as expediently as you can, including if that means firing people. We probably didn't fire our contractor early enough.
Or ask each other difficult questions at times, right? Which can be awkward.
Yeah, because I think as curlers, we're very trusting people. And so when, you have a contractor saying, like, oh, I'm really going to do it this time, and even though you're watching them.
And they're nice people.
Yeah, and they're nice people. I think, as volunteer curlers ourselves, not being in that position on a daily basis, like, you have to be prepared to make some really tough decisions and be tough. And so we had a lot of people doing that. It just, the challenges were enormous. I'd say other things to watch out for when you're looking for buildings, electrical. So we ended up having to upgrade our electrical, which made us have to deal with, like, PG&E and a lot of permitting, and it added to the complexity and cost substantially. Another thing I would say that ended up being a very good thing when we were looking at buildings, we found a place that had a landlord that was not like a traditional commercial landlord. She is like a family that owns businesses, and she had rented to community organizations before, and has been extremely supportive of us and the whole way through. I mean, she even contributed to the upgrades at the end to help us succeed. And I kind of have a feeling that if we had rented some of the buildings before, especially in the pandemic time, we would be dealing with a corporation and not like a human being who's sympathetic to a nonprofit.
Sympathetic landlord, also a rule there, but yeah, I mean, that's all. And I'm laughing a bit with you guys, but I will say, just for anybody watching this, you guys had some real challenges, and I give you credit for the perseverance, because it was stressful. I mean, and there weren't a lot of good answers for a little bit, and so credit to you and your group for persevering.
We give credit to the curling community.
Yeah, for helping us,
because when things got really rough, and they got really rough. I mean, there were times when, like, frankly, the club was probably weeks from being out of cash.
Yeah.
I mean, the community and other clubs, people we had met, people we had never met, really stood up for us, really had our backs. And if it were not for the larger curling community in the United States, our club simply, like, would not be here anymore at all. And while you don't want to count on that, support. It's nice to know that it's there and that we have it. And I think, when we talk about fundraising and these other things, like it really is, it's not like the corporations that you don't know who don't care about curling. It's your curlers, your community, their family and friends, their personal connections that they offer to you that are going to get you across the finish line.
Yeah. I'm going to throw it over to Craig here. Craig, I know you were basically the project manager in your projects, right? And so
Yep.
I just full disclosure here, when people phone me and say they want to move to dedicated ice, I usually, Craig whether he likes it or not, is usually an email I share pretty quickly. But let's talk about once you open, Craig. So you go, and let's talk maybe the first facility and the second facility. But you go from the euphoria of, hey, we're open, and then what's the reality like, and what are the challenges after that?
So, volunteers are really important when you're building a facility. They're even more important once you're open. So there's a lot more effort involved in operating a curling club than anybody thinks. The cleaning, the bar, running the bar, the events you're going to running corporate events. There's interest in corporate events during the day, but most of your people don't, are at work during the day. So how do you support those? So finding and getting people to step up and do that. I think the first year of our first facility, I did everything. And then, people stepped up and, people now have ownership of various things, but volunteers to operate the club are, probably even more important than having volunteers to help build the club.
One thing I always think with volunteers for operations too is you have to make sure you get the right amount of volunteers for each thing. And sometimes I think clubs end up with too many volunteers for one thing. People show up and they're disappointed because there's nothing to do, and then you have a hard time getting them back. So it's not only just finding volunteers, but making sure they're utilized in a way that they feel like they're making an impact, right? So that's a challenge.
Absolutely. Yep.
Hey, Jonathan, I gave you a hard time there about the police tape hog lines. Just I should probably explain that. He put police tape down the do not cross police lines as hog lines. I saw them and I was like, that's awesome. And then they bubbled up or something, right? Is that what happened?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. It turns out at Joann Fabrics you can buy these blades that perforate fabric, and a few passes with that, and the second year they went down a lot easier because if you've dealt with the perforated vinyl for rings and things like that, there was just it was strange. It was like there was no way for it to freeze properly in place, and then over the season it actually created a trough for whatever reason. So people were saying, "Oh, there's an insulating barrier there," and I'm like, it's a thin piece of vinyl. Like, it's not that big of a deal, right?
So that became your big headache. But let me ask you.
It was a trip hazard for a while there.
Was it? Slide over it and go down.
Yeah.
Let's ask you though. I mean, you guys opened and shortly thereafter, not pretty close, right? We ended up in the pandemic. So yeah, that was a challenge on its own. But what have been some of the challenges since you've opened in Cincinnati?
Yeah, it's funny. We had a board meeting this summer, and we're going into our fourth season, but every season's got an asterisk next to it. We haven't had what we could call a normal cycle, whether it's the Olympic season or a COVID season, or
I feel that way with my job at USA Curling. By the way, I'm hoping for a COVID-free season.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, we are trying as an operations crew, trying to stay open, stay under the radar through COVID, try to be safe. Our corporate events were flying off the shelves, like in that 2019 Christmas season. And then like we got room for 24 on the ice. How do you invite 50 people into your building during COVID, right? Like we had more events probably during that 2020-21 season, but they were all smaller. They were all like 8 people events or 10 people events instead of the 50 people and the 45 people events. Yeah, the volunteerism is huge. We're finally, after this Olympic cycle, we did so many learn to curls and instructional leagues. I think our members are finally starting to see how much effort my wife Monique and I put into it, and we burned out a bartender. He's back to traveling the globe with his job, so he's not the only person on the bar anymore, and we need more bartenders. We need more league coordinators. We need more of that sort of thing. We need an ice maker who will give up some of the duties to other people and not be so possessive about it. that's
some good self-awareness.
Yeah, I'm getting trapped in there a lot, but I guess I care about it a lot. And now we've got new stones, so that's created another excitement level around the technical aspects on the ice and how they curl and how they bounce off each other and stuff like that. So, people are excited for the sport. They want to help. Often I think they're maybe a little nervous on how they can help. So certainly we'll start teaching more instructor classes. We'll be giving people the confidence to move forward in a lot of different operational sides of it.
Yeah, I think they're nervous to help you with the ice, Jonathan.
Well, they are. They keep doing it wrong.
I would be, but no. Sue, I one of the reasons I had you on here in this panel is because your club, as you know, is one I admire for how you've grown membership and some of the innovative ways you've introduced curling in a community that where it's brand new. Really, it's not a part of the cultural landscape of the Triangle area. So talk to me a little bit about those things, how you've done them. I know one thing you guys did too is you sort of just gradually improve your warm room in your facility inside over years, but what are some of the things you've done once you're open to be as successful as you are right now?
That the sort of to tie into what people are talking about with volunteers, you need to give things up and let other people run them, and it's hard. And micromanagement comes in when you don't trust somebody, but you have to let that go. I've run a bonspiel for 10 years. It's time to let somebody else run the bonspiel. I'm going to go do the marketing. I'm going to do the rebranding. I'm going to embrace the area, and I'm going to let somebody who knows about curling, but maybe hasn't run a bonspiel before, run the bonspiel, so I can go out and do what needs to be done to get people that are not the non-curlers into the building, and have somebody else focus on getting our fellow curlers to come down to bonspiels and to welcome them. So that was part of it there. What you were saying about when we opened, we had cubicle walls. We had those for 18 months and then decided what type of bar we wanted to build, what type of kitchen we wanted to build, what type of chairs we wanted, that type of stuff. Huge emphasis from day one, though, on we had plastic tables, but they sat 8, and you're sitting with the team you curled against, and you're sharing drinks. From day one, that was emphasized, and that has really helped us. And then the atmosphere of putting a local sports event on, making sure that, like I said about the volunteers, that we sat around one day and was like, okay, we need to add a one-day bonspiel. Looked at a new curler. What should we do? And they're like, well, let's do Rock'em Sock'em Robots. We can do something off of that. It's like, okay, let's go. Getting the new people engaged. And then we were lucky enough to have people that retired and moved down here and ran our rentals program, which has been a huge success. And then also, stealing is good in curling. So go to Detroit's website. Detroit has one of the best rental programs. Went to their website, looked at how they ran it, looked at how people made up leagues. I had some fights because I was told that I could play we didn't have enough women for a women's league, so they had a men's league. And I was told I could play lead or second, and that wasn't going to fly because my mother had that argument in the 70s and won it. So I'm a third generation curler.
Don't tell Sue she can't do anything. God, who was that fool that told Sue not to do something?
So I'm very progressive when it's about stuff off the ice and getting members into the club and league makeup. And then on the ice, maintaining that tradition of how we play the game, where we stand, making sure our new members aren't repeating their first year every year.
Awesome. you know, you're talking about league structure. I'll throw something out, and you guys can all tell me if I'm crazy or not. But I've started to think if I was starting a curling club from scratch, I would have leagues based on time in the evening, expecting to have 2 draws versus the day, because whether it's Wednesday or Thursday doesn't matter to a lot of people, but 7 o'clock or 9 o'clock does. So just something I'd always consider. But Kim and Mike, you guys are in the thick of it right now. You just opened. You had your grand opening just a few weeks ago, and your sort of unofficial opening, I guess, last spring. But so, what's it been like? It's been a pleasure for me working with you guys on the Ice Tech Summit and some other things. But tell me what it's been like.
Well, it's very similar to what everyone else has said. I mean, one of the challenges that we've seen having been off of our ice for so long is that our membership was down to 50 when we opened, and we knew people were around the area, and we're already back up to 180 and attracting new folks, and it's been really great. But it is just a massive, massive effort. And you know, we have a core group of people who are doing their day jobs and then the rest of their night may not even involve sleep, but maybe doing curling work and taking curling calls like during a regular job. I mean, it is a ton of work, and I don't think people who are not volunteering really appreciate it. I mean, they appreciate the outcome, but they just don't understand the hours that are going in. So we're having a lot of success getting new volunteers. People are really stepping up, and it's been really great to see. And, you know, things are just going. I think one of our big challenges right now is not just finding enough volunteers, but volunteer recognition. And some of that is that it takes a lot of planning to appropriately recognize, because everything that is done in the club is a volunteer activity. So like what gets a $5 reward versus not, and so remembering to thank everybody and figuring out how to do it in a way that makes people feel valued is one of, I think, is a challenge that I think all of our clubs face. And then, of course, like when you're doing so many other things, you may not even recognize that you're not telling people thank you enough, or that maybe they're not hearing the thank you enough. So,
Mike, you talked. Sorry, go ahead, man. Keep going.
Just agree with what everybody said about just kind of taking a crawl, walk, run philosophy to being open in your first year. And, you know, fortunately in our region, we had, you know, good friends at Evergreen in Portland and Coyotes in Arizona who had gone just before us. And we've been able to see the evolution of those clubs and how they approached it. But, you know, when you think about it, you know, in an arena, like the ice isn't always very good, but they provide a lot of support, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, from the business standpoint, you know, they keep the lights on, like they're taking care of their ice as best as they can for an arena. You know, they're staffing their bar. There's a lot they're doing for you that you don't have to do, that all of a sudden when you're on your own, like you've got to take care of, you know, that entire business end to end, and it is a business. And a lot of that's going to be new muscle for an arena club. And again, you have to understand, it's good to understand what expertise you have within your membership that's going to be able to help you with that. And also understand that it's not going to be perfect on day one, because you're learning to do a lot of things for the first time. So bite off what you can chew, do the essentials, have great ice, great community, 2 toilets. And you know, if you can start from that foundation, then you can build something great over time.
Have you guys set benchmarks for when you might hire a club manager, for instance? Has that been discussed?
We do. I mean, I think both club manager and ice maker would probably be our first employees that we'd love to hire. I think right now we're just trying to financially figure out, you know.
Well, I know not right now. I'm trying to keep you optimistic.
Yeah,
I mean, like, you know, you model things out. We did create, you know, several year model that models our revenue and expenses, membership growth, and things like that. And so there's a placeholder in there for when we think we might be able to hire folks. But it's also a matter of executing to or ahead of that plan that's gonna enable that.
Yeah.
And so right now it's growth, right? Like club growth.
Right.
The more quickly we can get our membership up, like it helps with revenue, it helps with volunteerism, it helps bring new expertise into the club. And so really focusing on growth in that first year, opening in an Olympic year if you can is great for that. You know,
except when that Olympic year is in a pandemic
Yeah.
and everything just completely just flaps over. Because I think like our corporate events, like we were saying, are much smaller than they used to be, and people are less likely to come out if they're scared of, you know, if
Yeah.
they're COVID
Yeah.
shy. It's just all changed so much since we first, you know, went down this path, and so we're pivoting. And
but recruitment
Yeah.
can solve a lot of problems for you. That's a good.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned the fast growth, and I think out in the area you live in, you just have to throw around the word scale a lot. So you got to scale, and you'll be you'll be understood. Craig, I'm going to throw it over to you here. Would you're basically, I think you've been the club manager at both places. Would you guys ever consider like a point where you do have staff?
I doubt it. You know, we're not a huge club. We're, you know, 95 members right now.
Mhm.
I don't think it would be tough to do financially.
Right.
And, you know, you do that and then somebody's volunteering at 100 events and, you know, how are they compensated and everything else. So I don't see that in our plan, but we're not, you know, going to be 200 plus members and, you know, generate that sort of revenue to make that work.
All right, I'm going to whip around to wrap up here, but I'm going to ask all of you the one thing you do differently, if you could do it again, one thing, and what do you miss about curling in the arena setting? So I'll start with Sue.
Oh, geez. I think back to, because we built it ourselves, we'd have windows down for our viewing would be better. I think
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And then we have change rooms, but not locker rooms. But I think from Safe Sport in every aspect, we should have a family or an individual stall as well. So some things around that we didn't have the money or the timing wasn't right to add it. And you said something we do.
Yeah, something you miss from the arena setting. Is there anything you miss?
Geez.
Not having to worry about who keeps the lights on, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, we have a bonspiel. You know, I'm taking garbage home and throwing it in a dumpster. You know, we don't have somebody taking out the garbage.
Right.
You know, we don't do the toilets. We've hired out cleaning people to come in twice a week.
Excellent call. I said at my club, as much as I love curling, I don't want to scrub a toilet.
Nope, absolutely not. And yeah. So.
All right. Jonathan, biggest thing you do differently, and if there's anything you miss, I don't know what you're going to tell me there, but maybe let's reverse them. Let's go biggest thing the one thing you miss from an arena and the thing you do differently.
I miss the surprises at the arena, the walking in and discovering that some welder had set off the fire suppression system and the oily water from 1950 had somehow sunk into the ice. That was the joy on my face of walking back to the Zamboni room, they thinking I don't know what I'm talking about, and having the guy from the laser level company trying to install a laser level system for Zamboni and going, "Hey John, how's it going?" Like we were old buddies from you know, way back. And coming to find out their ice was 4 inches above the plus or minus range that the laser level could handle. That was a fun day.
So that's what you miss. Biggest the one thing you do differently. Again, I'm going to say it once more. Besides those hog lines, but actually, you know what I love?
Yeah.
Just quickly, if people go on your website, I love that side viewing area you have.
Yeah, the side view. I wasn't a fan of the heckle space, the beer garden space. We've got a space on the side where the viewing area is open to the players, So there's no glass wall there. You can interact with the players freely. I was nervous about that. I knew I could handle some ribbon during a bonspiel with people talking while I was in my backswing. I wasn't sure if the other players could handle it. And in the end, I can't close up that space now. Everybody who comes in during a bonspiel says, "Oh, this is great. This is perfect. This is so much fun. We can sit here and talk with the players and we can hear what they're thinking for their shots and stuff like that." I think as I grew up as a junior, there's some niceness of getting, away from your parents and doing the sport without hearing their voices behind you, right? When they're behind the glass. So, yeah, that I would have changed at the beginning, but I got talked out of it or priced out of it. 4 sheets would have been nice. 3's tough.
Yeah.
Craig can probably attest to that.
Yeah.
The 4 quarterfinals in a bonspiel is way easier on 4 sheets than it is in a 3-sheet environment.
How about the 5-sheet environment in California? Anything you would anything you miss about arena curling, which I'm pretty sure now nobody misses anything, but and then the thing you do differently.
Arena curling makes you a better curler in a lot of ways because there's a lot of weird ice situations you have to deal with, and when you John said it, like when you show up at the odd bonspiel on a bad ice day or or an old club, and sometimes you can get an end or two advantage on your opponents by just believing what the ice is doing a little bit faster. So I guess it's a nice skill to have in our pockets that you don't always get. But other than that, not a whole heck of a lot.
No, I mean, I personally miss not having to think about the whole building and everything that's going on when I come to curling. Personally, that was the glory days when I could just show up and curl and have a great time and leave. But I'm happy to do what I'm doing because it really is such a better experience having your own facility and so much better ice.
So in the short time you've been open, is there one thing you're like, oh, I wish we'd done this differently? I mean, it's like when you build a house, right? Eventually there's one thing.
We had to do a lot of things differently as a result of the situation. And so it was really it was really whatever we needed to do to get in the doors. I think going back to the beginning, even though it would have been more money up front, I would have brought a couple of additional trades on, at the beginning of the project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Probably would have had external legal representation in our corner in case we needed it from the start, and maybe an external project manager just to have an independent third party looking over construction matters. I think that's one thing is, you want to get things done as cheaply as possible, but it's also important to get them done right. And a couple things, worth spending on to make sure you don't get into trouble based on our experience. So that really might change. I don't know if you'd say anything different.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely go back and just hire an owner's representative if you're having to do, hire out a lot of stuff in a project manager. I think the things that we chose, I'm not sure I would change much. We, chose to do 5 sheets instead of 4 sheets. We gave up some warm room space, but it's really nice having 5 sheets, especially as we grow quickly. And I think we can pivot. I mean, there's a lot of things that I would change that just happened to us, but I mean, I think the decisions we made were good.
Craig, I'm going to wrap up with you, but it's been a while, I think, since you've been on Arena Ice, but you can almost say, is there anything you missed from your old building into the new one? And then I know there's probably a few construction things. You have sound advice on things that you wish you'd done differently or at least things to look out for.
Yeah, so certainly I think the only thing that I really miss from our old facility is that our warm room was about 4 feet higher than the ice room. So, as you're watching, as you're spectating, the skips aren't standing in the way, blocking your view of the shot,
et cetera. Point. Yeah.
I think that's the one thing that is better at the old facility. We had the benefit, obviously, of building a second facility. So all the things we screwed up when we did it the first time, we made sure not to do again. our goal was make new mistakes, not make the same mistakes again. And I think the one place we fell down on that is, water is a treacherous thing and finds its way out, and getting that pond sealed. Both of our facilities, as we melt, we have leakage in. So invest as much as you can to seal that pond in every way possible, I would say. And then, the other thing, big things from the first facility was not building enough storage space. You don't sort of think about, where you're going to put things as you're building this out, especially when you're in a space with limited room. But you're going to want to make sure you build plenty of storage space, so that, because otherwise your place just looks cluttered, and you want it to be uncluttered and welcoming when people come in. So make sure you just plan for plenty of storage space for both all your ice equipment and then stuff in your warm room, etc. Because that's something that you tend to forget about.
Well, we're going to wrap up with that unexpected, super practical, super valuable bit of advice there on storage. It's certainly something I hadn't thought about and makes a ton of sense. I want to thank all of you, Kim, Mike, Craig, Sue, Jonathan. Thanks for your time today. Anybody out there listening, I know all these people. Well, I just actually met Kim and Mike, but I feel like I know people out there. And in my experience, they're all certainly willing to offer advice and assistance to anybody trying to make the move they made. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, what's left of it.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Great day.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks. Have a good day, everybody. Good curling.